Hello, NFT land. I'm Creatorius Rex. Thanks for coming back again for Twin this week in NFT news. And as always, my co-host Scott Leach is with me today.
How's it
Scott,
going?
it's
I'm
going
doing well.
well. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's going great. Going good. Busy, crazy busy. So much happening this week.
Anything good happened to you this week? Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so everybody, Scott has a super secret revelation. One of the great NFT collectors of all time. We'll talk to you about his best trades.
We all make mistakes.
Okay, so topics this week. I know everybody interested in. Is the recession over? Is the NFT recession over? Coinbase signs up top NFT projects, rug pulls and scams. We've had a couple of those. I'm going to tell you about the Niftorian Art Jam and how there's some scams in there. People trying to scam our really cool art contest at Niftorian. Movies and NFTs, how that's playing out. The law. I don't know if we'll get to the law, but we might. Korea just did something. And then projects. We want to talk about Bored Ape Yacht Club because, boy, they are just proving every week that they are the best NFT project out there. Okay, so Scott, let's start with the recession, the dreaded NFT recession. Some people deign to call it an NFT winter. That was the shortest wintry season that I can remember. So people have been really happy the last few days because we've had more liquidity, certainly on OpenSea. We'll talk about OpenSea first. And we've had a lot of floor prices go up, particularly for what are either clear blue chips or popular sort of trending towards blue chip projects. Yes. And there's some interesting information here. So if you guys can look at this little chart here, this is the OpenSea Ethereum volume over the past couple of months. You can see that had that huge spike in August. August was insane. Came down, went back up again in early October. We had a nice spike, but then it's been trending down for a month. And it seems that coming out of NFT NYC, Ethereum doing a slight pullback, we've basically doubled the Ethereum daily volume on OpenSea. And that seems to be making people pretty happy.
Yeah. And this is tricky to see. It's hard to know what's causing this, at least for me. I'd love to hear other folks' insight. But yeah, I know ETH has dropped a little bit. I know we talked about this just before the show. Post Malone bought a Bored Ape. There was the Meta announcements, that we talked about last week, and maybe those are starting to shape up. But this sudden increase, that's a big spike right there.
One of the things actually, maybe we should look into is sandbox sales and Decentraland sales on OpenSea. That's obviously one of the places you can conduct those transactions. So that probably helps. So I think Meta is a good addition to this conversation. Clearly there was a lot of enthusiasm coming out of NFT NYC. It seemed like that week there was not going to be a lot of action because people were out and about. And there's a lot of people I know that do not trade, do not buy and sell off of a mobile device. I know some people do, but some people just will not do it because they believe it's less secure or they're more likely to make a mistake. So they think with people being gone and then before that sort of general malaise or people were concerned about the market coming back in, what's done well is, maybe new projects are doing well. I think the jury's out on that. But I think some of the established projects that already look pretty good, that had a good presence at NFT NYC, all the floors are going up. Doodles are just over 2, Creature World's over 2 for the floor. Bored Ape has been screaming. Mutant Ape, someone came in and swept the floor of the mutants. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I have a lot of theories on this and ideas about it. I do think that the meta thing is interesting because when you start researching land or start getting into that, you realize that NFTs have a place in the metaverse and another layer of utility in terms of you can see, NFT galleries in Sandbox or in Decentraland, but also NFTs as gameplay elements too. So I do wonder if part of the, Sandbox sales of NFTs, but also people that are acquiring virtual land are also starting to get, that's a pathway into NFTs, and that could be happening as well. But I do think the price dip, I mean, just speaking for myself, when I'm collecting or doing things with coins, I tend to see what's the thing that's volatile is the thing you kind of look at. And when I do that, that's sort of where my focus is. So I have been focused a lot on ETH and the price of ETH and the price of a lot of these coins, and less focused on NFTs. And now that it's starting to flip, I'm looking again at NFTs. So I think we're like, despite my personal values, I sort of get caught up in what's going on. So yeah,
It's tough to be a day trader in this space. I mean, I think
it is, and that's never really worked for me.
Can you time the market? I mean, that's
and I hate doing that because I just don't. I think it's like ripe for heartbreak. Versus if there's some other reason why you're passionate about the project or the coin, and in my personal experience, that's tend to work out better for me.
That's right. Well, I think about like VFriends. I sold one not too long after minting. I think it was like 3.5 or something like that. Which looks ridiculous now, but basically it was part of the strategy. I just wanted to cover all my costs for getting into VFriends. It looks like I sacrificed a lot of potential value there, but who knows? It was like, that was my first NFT foray, and it spent a lot of money, from my perspective at that point. But then a couple weeks later, it was going up to 6. So I just listed at 7 just to see what would happen. And it got snagged. It got snagged within an hour.
Yeah.
And I was feeling pretty good about that. And that was a local maximum, because they went down after that for like a month or 6 weeks. But then like the lowest we've seen since that period is it popped back up to 10, and then it's been as high as 23, I think.
Yeah, it was really high for a while there. Yeah.
Back down to the sort of the low teens most days. So it's interesting because I actually, for that second trade, I actually timed the market perfectly, because I got basically the maximum that anyone was getting around that. I got more than before, the maximum everyone was getting. But it just 2 months later, it looked really foolish. Now I would say that it was really helpful because it gave me Ethereum to use to buy a bunch of shitcoin NFTs. No, some good ones too. And this is one of the things we should talk about. Does anybody have a name? Like, tweet at me at Creatorius Rex if you have a name for the shitcoin equivalent of bad NFT projects. Because I guess there's portfolio theory in there, but it was just like a lot of project I thought just looked interesting coming out in August and September. And so I just bought a lot of them. And some of them obviously were really good. Crypto Dads, Robotos. I still have high hopes for Junkyard Dogs. Maybe Top Dog Beach Club. There's a few in there that I purchased that I feel good about, that were new at the time. But there's just a lot that are not going to go anywhere, I don't think, ever. So I think this timing the market is really hard.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I can talk about it an hour later, but I just had this experience with the Bored Ape thing that I was telling you.
Okay, go for it.
I was extremely fortunate in that when I was getting into NFTs, Bored Apes were happening. I didn't mint, but I think I got my first one for 0.38 ETH. I saw that go up and I held on to it. And then at some point, someone offered me, I think maybe 4 ETH for that, or 5 ETH, but the floor at the time, I want to say, was maybe around 2. So I was like, oh, I'll do that. And then I'll buy 2 more. So I did that, bought 2 more, and I've held those for quite a while until last week. And I realized I had a lot of NFTs. And I thought I'm going to get some coins, and I'm going to kind of consolidate and go to the collections I really want to get more involved in and stop casting such a wide net. I have an ape. I've got a lot of mutants. So I listed one of my apes and sold it for 33 ETH. And today I believe the floor is 50. That was a few days ago. And it is what it is. I mean, in this case, I paid so little for it. It's hard to have any,
yeah, I mean, you did well.
it just is.
You have a nice tax bill associated with it.
Totally. And my intention actually at the time was like, oh, maybe I'll pick another one up when it, I still was under the impression at that point that things are probably going to dip a little bit going into Q1 as people get ready for taxes and whatnot. But again, that's back to the thing of I sometimes start, when I think about this stuff, if I get in my head about it, I'm not following what is true to me. I'm sort of just getting caught up in what other people are saying. I don't know. I've been,
Yeah.
but up to this point, I haven't really sold any NFTs since a few here and there. But for the most part, I've held a lot, but I sold a lot of stuff last week.
Yeah.
Just to try and consolidate to buy into projects I like more. We'll see how soon I'll be able to do that.
Yeah. I don't even know. I mean, I don't know that, like, most of my wallet's probably not liquid. I mean, I could sell a mutant for a nice plus up, but then I wouldn't have a mutant anymore because I only have one. So I
Yeah.
can't do that. I want to be part of that project. So yeah, so I think it's really interesting. I will say, just in terms of things going up, and obviously Bored Ape had it rocketed up. Mutants went way up.
Yep.
You could buy a mutant for $12,000 or $13,000 equivalent in ETH. That was just 10 days ago, something like that. 8 days ago, something like that.
Yep.
I don't even know what it is today, but it was approaching 30 at one point. So that's been good. Someone came in, apparently, the rumor is someone swept the floor. One wallet picked up several. Seems like a good bet. I think that Bored Ape is clearly a blue chip, clearly has done wonderfully in executing a roadmap that people care about. It has become part of culture. And you talked about Post Malone, Jimmy Fallon aped in. I will say, though, I'm trying to decide whether I like that or not. I'm not sure that, does that make me more interested in a project if Post Malone and Jimmy Fallon are in it, or does it make me less interested?
There's a lot of weird stuff that comes along with all this, right? It'll be interesting to see.
I mean, it's good from an investor if you're thinking about the value of it, right? Most people on the outside be like, yeah, I want to be part of the thing Jimmy Fallon's in. And I like Jimmy Fallon fine. I mean, I don't have anything, but I'm like, it seemed, when it was not celebrities so much. I mean, there were already celebrities in Bored Ape, so it's probably not that big a deal. But I was just like, I like hanging out in the Discord with the people who are in there.
Yeah.
It's not the celebrities. It's like the people who care about Bored Ape.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all these layers, right? There's the community aspect and the camaraderie that comes along with that. And the shared experience. I think, especially for folks who, a lot of the community was there early on, right? So they helped sort of shape and build that. So I think their relationship to it is different than, it's not just a status symbol to them. I mean, it has status, but it has deeper meaning in terms of their involvement in the project and their, it'll be really interesting to see, like, as Vaynerchuk was talking about this too, like, as a brand, who controls the brand at this point? And then what happens if it becomes unpopular all of a sudden? It becomes a thing of like,
well, if you have, because the Bored Ape owners own the individual NFTs, if they start doing some things which are maybe bad for the brand, and that's one of the things where Gary talks about keeping control of the brand.
Yes. He's big on that.
He doesn't want to give that up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And it'll also be interesting to see if people start to recognize. I think right now we're at the layer of recognition where a lot of people can, obviously people in the space know exactly what a Bored Ape looks like, but people outside the space are starting to recognize, oh yeah, I've seen that around, that ape, those apes. Will we get to the point where people start to recognize individual apes and know that, like, oh, I've seen that specific ape, and that's the one that so-and-so held, and that's the one that was stolen, or that's the one that was held by some person that I don't like, or how those stories develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, just going back to our original topic around the recession, we'll sort of close this out. We've got some Google Trend data here. All you can see here is this is the 5-year for the United States. You see, it got really popular earlier this year. Over the summer, like, nobody cared about it. This is the number of Google searches for the term. And then over the last 3 months, got really popular again. If you look at the worldwide numbers, it's basically the same, although there's been a little bit of pullback in the last couple of weeks outside the US, not in the US, but I think a lot of that's driven by NFT NYC, which drove so much media attention in the US. So I just bring this up. We talked about Jimmy Fallon, we talked about Post Malone. There's obviously other people in there. We NFT NYC and the bands that played, all the other things that have been going on, the Times Square being taken over with the billboards, all NFTs and things like that. What this tells me is NFTs are now really cemented into popular culture. It's going to be hard for them to pull back. I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of value tied up in NFTs, so they have no incentive of just like abandoning the space. And it's, in many cases, it's up to them, like whether there's value to it or not.
Absolutely.
And then there's like people are trying to learn about this. And I was in a Twitter thread of some people who, you know, are maybe early adopters of some technology, but they're like, I think this is all bullshit. And I don't even try to really convince people anymore. I was like, I don't really make arguments. I just put information back out and say, hey, you know, here's the information. And they were responding to something that I'd put up. I said, you know, just look at this. And then it's so similar to what I saw in the mid 90s around the web. And like one of these guys says, well, I don't remember it being that way. I said, oh yeah. Like the media things were like, what are these silly people doing? Like everyone's a geek. Now they're like, they have more time they're spending on. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, you could have AOL. So that's good for the people, but not the interwebs, right? The web, that's just like terrible.
Yeah.
And all of these companies, they're having these sky high valuations, but they don't make any money. This is ridiculous. And the .com boom. This was all a fad. The internet.
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same thing again and again. And I always think the analogy I always think of is like when the printing press came out, what was this happening? Like was there dinner parties where parents are like, I'm so concerned they're just going to be sitting in their room reading all day. Like, no,
because you couldn't afford a book.
That too. But it does. Yeah, it's funny. And I get excited about sharing stuff with people because I think the point at which it connects with someone it's neat. It's neat to learn that something has potential and to get excited about that. But so I used to try and persuade people about that stuff, but now it's like, look, all right, have fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it really doesn't bother me one bit. I mean, some of them are like, they like to basically call you a fool for even spending any time in it. And a lot of vitriol. Actually, I had a really good exchange with someone who I know fairly well. And he's just like, honest question. I'm trying to understand this. And so I responded to him. And then a lot of people sort of jumped in like, this is total BS. Then other people jump in and said, oh, like you guys are crazy. I don't even care because I feel like it's a natural human reaction to resist change. It's, you know, particularly when you see like a lot of activity you're not part of to say, oh, that's just not real.
Absolutely.
And 5 years from now, they're all going to be standing next to me doing what I'm doing. And
forget that they were ever naysayers. Like our ability to tell ourselves stories is powerful.
And you know, the funny thing is I don't feel that like I was ever negative about NFTs, but like when Top Shot was coming out, I'm like, what's the point of this? And I still sort of think, what's the point of Top Shot? Just to be clear, I think it's sort of fake NFT land. But like, I don't think I was ever really negative about it. I just like, you know, people are doing this because they're doing that. And I will say there is one big difference. I pointed out to someone, they said, oh yeah, you know, the internet, maybe, I don't know. I said, yeah, there is a key difference though. The key difference is that people are spending money and people are making money. And that was not true in the late 90s on the internet. The only one people spending money and making money were venture capitalists. And, you know, and that obviously changed in the decade of the first decade of this century.
Well, the other thing about this that I think, you know, people see it from one way with right click and save. Like I stole your NFT, but if all you see is the image, there's the scarcity piece, there's the utility piece. There's so many things rolled up into this that you can't even find an analog that's exactly like it.
Well, let's talk about it. I'm going to move something up. We were going to talk about Coinbase. We'll come back to Coinbase.
Yep.
Right click and save. So there's the right click and save. And then we're already starting to see this where there's like social stigma associated with that. Like we started to see like, you don't own that ape. Like I just saw someone recently try to get all of the apes to hate on some guy who had right-clicked and saved and changed his Twitter profile, and because someone said, "That's my ape. Here's the transaction. I own that. Here's my wallet, but this person is using it." And a couple people came back and said, "Yeah, that's terrible." And other people are like, I don't think I know enough information about this. Like, I just see your tweet. I don't feel like I can pile on." And maybe that was there was Twitter, but actually I think I was seeing this in the Discord. So in any event, people were sort of saying, we'll just have to figure this out. I think it's, so there's that piece. And then there's this other thing around the stolen apes and what happened there. So we have this one where people are just sort of, they're borrowing your, your the thing you own. And maybe they're positioning as if they owned it, or they're not being clear about it, whatever. But then we have this other thing where they're stolen. So someone lost 3 apes in a transaction. I want to say that they thought they were talking to OpenSea support.
Sure.
And they lost 3 apes, and then immediately went and said, "Hey, Twitter world, help me with this." OpenSea responded by making it basically a non-tradable token on their platform. I think Rarible did it as well.
Did the same,
a couple others. So that reduced liquidity. It doesn't mean they can't get rid of it. They could do a direct transaction. There's lots of places they could do it. This is the beauty of decentralization. But immediately the backlash. People have said, "Okay, this seems great in a perfect world. What about decentralization? What about this idea that just a couple of trading marketplaces could basically shut down the sale of this?" And this was stolen, but they could do that for anything. They could be just like, I don't like that ape, or I don't like that NFT. I don't like that artist that created an NFT. We are going to ban it. And this sounds a lot like this sounds like a Twitter ban or a Facebook ban.
Yeah, I think we're going to run into more and more of this, where at what point, what does decentralization mean and to whom? And it's hard. I mean, shit, we live in a democracy. It's a similar, like, at what point do your rights infringe on
So
mine?
do you think
right?
OpenSea should do that? I mean, like, what's your gut tell you?
So here's what I think. I think it's good that they took action, because it causes this conversation right now, right? So it's good to take action, even if it's the wrong action, to learn what the right action is. I'm a strong proponent of that strategy, so long as you're not
make mistakes so everyone can see your mistakes.
Make mistakes as fast as possible. Yeah, there's an awesome quote from, I think, Pete Docter of Pixar said that there's points in the filmmaking process where you get stuck, and the best thing you can do is make the wrong decision as quickly as possible. So I think in this case, it's actually not terrible. I don't really know what the answer. This is a hard question. Is there a site where you can go and learn about the history of an ape and say, like, hey, I'm entering this ape number or this NFT number and seeing what happened, and like, oh, look, these people said it was stolen. What's to stop a group of folks to form a DAO and just claim that a bunch of NFTs were stolen that never were stolen? Like, we can create all sorts of stories in a decentralized. So I do think at some point it's okay for an entity to say, this doesn't jive with our value system, and then let their users decide if they want to continue to use that service or not. But to your point, someone else can go somewhere else and find a way to swap this too, right? I mean,
again, it doesn't just like this. I mean, I think
it's not your only option.
Yeah, I probably don't have a problem with it. So it's interesting to sort of couple this with the other discussion about this right click and save. So in that case, the social penalty is potentially being paid by an individual, who is passing themselves off as an owner of something they didn't have. In this case, we'll forget about OpenSea for a second, and we'll just talk about the actual artwork. In this case, the stigma is associated with the artwork. And we've seen this before with stolen art. Some art is like too hot to move. And then what happens now, there's all these legal proceedings associated with recovery of stolen art, and which does not exist really for the NFT world yet, although maybe it could. at some point. So I wonder if this ape then becomes notorious, and does that mean it's too hot to handle, or does that make it more valuable going forward because it's the
Yeah.
stolen ape?
Well, yeah, it's like the Wu-Tang album we talked about a couple weeks back, right? Like,
Right.
does it now have this history that's kind of intriguing? And there's a neat history of paintings being stolen that's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it makes me wonder. I know a lot of when this happens, I see a lot of people on Twitter trying to help the person out.
Sure.
Um, and it's like,
Identify
is
who the
there,
person is, dox the person, create
yeah,
this,
or try and buy it back, which is a
which has
weird thing
happened.
because yeah, and it's helpful to the person who lost it, and it's a great altruistic. I think it's good for the community as a whole to show that they're supporting one another, but it's also telling thieves that, yeah, hey, steal it, and then we'll just buy it back from you.
That's like the
Um,
ransomware. Like you pay the
yeah, exactly.
ransomware and you're just an enabler. So, okay. So that was, I think that's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with this. I actually think it's fine. OpenSea has to decide how it wants to navigate the world. Uh, Maybe they'll make a different decision in the future. Right now, they've made a decision that they don't want stolen property being sold on the site. That leads to maybe a slippery slope around how to determine what's stolen. Um, and we
Yeah, I
can,
think that's
I
it's
can
going to
give
be
you,
inevitable, right? They have to at some point they have to take a stand, and then wherever that line is, there's going to be arguments on either side of
yes,
what's the Supreme Court thing about pornography, the famous quote of I
yeah,
know it when I see it.
yeah.
Like I can't tell you what it is, but I'll know it when I see it. Um,
Well, I knew something when I saw it, so we've had some personal experience, sort of
yeah.
related to this. So, in the Niftorious Discord server, so people know about the Niftorian NFT project. I mentioned it last week. That's something that I'm involved with, and it's an artist centric project, and it's for collectors as well. We're trying to introduce new artists to collectors, and we're trying to help artists meet collectors because that's been a big gap that we've identified. And one of the things we started to do right away, we sort of did a soft launch about a week ago, and we said, hey, we're going to run a contest, and we just went out to a couple places where we know, artists we know, but a few places that we know artists hang out. We said, hey, we're running this contest. We're giving away basically 0.1 ETH to the winner, and then we're giving away a couple NFTs to the runners up. And not surprisingly, someone found out about it pretty quickly and started to game the system. And it actually, the first 3 days were just bliss, all above the board. People were coming in. We had a little thing where you could just click an icon, you could vote for things. We have a whole finalist concept, but we did have rules. The rules are that you have to be the owner, the artist. You have to be the creator of that, and you cannot do a paid promotion of it. You can invite your friends. You can put it. You can go on social media if you've got a lot of reach or something like that. You could have them come into the Discord and vote on it. Presumably, they would see the other artists as well, and that might get exposure to them. So we thought that, is that great? Is that just a popularity contest? I don't know, but it's an experiment, right? So
Mhm.
are we, we're at least learning, right? Maybe we're making a mistake quickly. I don't think so, but it was a good learning thing. And so 3 or 4 days in, we're sort of coming to the point where we're going to go to the finalist stage. Someone says, "Oh, those aren't that person's NFT. Those aren't, or it's not that person's artwork." Back and forth. One of our admins on the channel basically talked to the person through DMs, and they decided to remove them. All right, no problem, no harm, no foul. And then we get to the finalist stage, and 12 hours after we select the three finalists, which, there's a whole voting process, 24-hour voting process for that. One of them, it was revealed that they were paying people a small amount of Bitcoin to come in into our server and vote. Um, and it's not clear that it's their artwork. That's in
Oh
dispute
man.
whether it's their artwork. We have another piece that is also questionable whether it's the person's artwork. So yeah, we're trying to do something nice for the artist community to get them exposure. And I mean, maybe we should. Yeah, maybe if there were no ETH involved, maybe it would be easier. It's not even that much. I mean, 0.1 ETH is not completely inconsequential, but I mean, I consider it to be more symbolic. It's not trivial, but it's not significant.
Yeah.
It's really just more participating, and we're actually going to do this whole thing where we're going to promote the people who are the winners, to try to get them more exposure and some of those. So I think there's like good that can come out of it, but the question is then, are the people who were sort of passing themselves off as the creators of this art, is there going to be social stigma? Because what we found out was, even though we have a very small community, and people here should come in, go to bit.ly/Niftorian-NFT, bit.ly/Niftorian-NFT with capital N for Niftorian and capital NFT. That'll get you there. All right. Or you can just go to Niftorian.com and you can get there through that. So what we found is we've got, a couple hundred people in the Discord community, and they were policing. So we found out all this stuff by people saying, hey, that's not their artwork. This person is doing this. And it's so funny.
Yeah. Well, it's like back to that conversation we had in maybe the first or second episode about Adobe and their validation using blockchain to prove that you created something could be interesting in that use case. But this is something that I think we've educated people to with social media. We've taught people how to game to get recognition. And it gets blurry as to like what's just against the rules, what's bad sportsmanship, and what's okay. I don't know. It's tricky. Yeah. I mean, taking someone else's art is just lame. The other thing that the thing with all these scams, it's just always all the work folks do for a scam is in many cases less work than the work to just do the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's like they put in more effort to scam than they could to actually create something. Yeah. I think that's possible. So by the way, everyone if you're watching this, we're running another contest because we're going to run. I think we've decided that this was interesting enough. We're going to try to run it for the next few weeks anyway, and there'll be different prizes each week. But if you have artwork, you want some recognition, put it up there. You can invite people to vote on it. You can just interact with the people who are in the Discord already. Really cool feedback. We saw so many things. We saw like a video, which was basically poetry. We saw lots of different styles. Really enjoyed it. So we're definitely going to do more of it because I think it's just like a great exposure for some folks.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so but I think what we're going to do, we might move to no external voting.
Are you doing a prompt? I know I was so swamped. I looked a little bit at some of the stuff people had posted, but not at the specific rules. Like, could you add like hey, include this in your art? I guess that means they'd have to create art for the thing, but that might prevent people from stealing art online. Although I guess at this stage,
what are you saying? Doing a prompt?
Include a flower, a thimble, and a dice or a number or something to get people to include that in their artwork in some way, so that that it was created originally for this thing and not a stolen piece. Couldn't someone
just do that with they just rip the image off and
at Photoshop this stage you could just
yeah. So I would say, so one of the things we're going to do is I think we're going to have a panel. So we have a lot of artists involved in the project. So we're going to put a bunch of artists on this panel, and we'll have maybe 1 week you could be a judge. So we'll have a judges panel. We would like to do something where the people vote as well, because we want collectors to be able to express interest, and other artists as well. So I think we're going to have some mechanism there. We'll announce in the next couple of days what that is. So everyone just if you go to the announcements channel, you see it, but we actually have it's called the NFT Art Jam channel. And then there's contest rules. So you can just look in there. But we're going to do this again. So if you are an artist, come on in. If you're a collector, come on in. In fact, we're giving away everyone who votes. They also are eligible. One person, we were going to pick them at random of all the people who voted in the process. In order, they'll actually get an NFT from us. One of our mint passes, which is pretty good value, as well as really good art because part of a full NFT collection, the Founders Collection. So, in any event, let's move on. Probably talked about that long enough. Let me talk about Coinbase. So Coinbase, a little over a week ago, came out with a short video of how the UI is going to look. There's a lot of very interesting things in there. You can connect with your Coinbase wallet. You can connect with your non-custodial wallet if you prefer. Coinbase has said that they will actually custody your NFTs for you, which I think is interesting if you use their wallet. That's your choice how you want to do that. I think that's going to be attractive to some folks because we just talked about someone losing 3 apes, and that's just one of many over the last 2 weeks that we've heard about. So we've got this idea of having followers. So, geez, think about that, right? So you get notified every time someone you're following adds something or maybe sells it from their portfolio. I think that's really interesting.
It seems like there's a lot of emphasis on the broadcasting your collection versus just acquiring and the marketplace aspects, right?
Yeah, and we talked about that with Twitter being a place where they want to add that functionality where you can actually have a tab to like show all your NFTs. So I think that's a really good thing. And then so we say, okay, well, Coinbase, I think a lot of people in the crypto world like it. There's certainly a number of people who think it's like just a centralized custodial wallet, and so it's evil. So I didn't really know how the NFT community would be about this. But there are not a lot of anti-Coinbase zealots so far. I think they're going to come out of the woodwork at some point. It seems like everybody likes Coinbase NFT market. So we've seen VFriends, Mechaverse, Doodles, Creature World, World of Women. Like all of these like high-profile blue chip or trending towards blue chip projects. Seems like Coinbase has signed them all up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people are understanding too in the space that the marketplace is just the marketplace. It doesn't mean that it's not necessarily where you have to mint NFTs or they don't necessarily control the NFTs. Just because something is sold at a marketplace doesn't mean that they're separate things, right? So I think that a lot of folks that are hardcore into the principles of blockchain and NFT and that sort of stuff aren't necessarily put off by this because it's just a marketplace. They might never do the custodial thing. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I think that's all I really wanted to talk about was that everyone's aping into Coinbase Marketplace. And I don't know if they're providing incentives or I don't have any information on that, but I have a feeling they probably are.
My read is like, I'm talking to so many people now that like a year ago, it was like, how do I get Bitcoin? That would be the question. Maybe once in a while, like, should I get Ethereum or any of these other coins? And then now it's, hey, I have my Coinbase. I have all these coins. How do I get into NFTs? How do I get into liquidity farming? Whatever the thing, they're at that base layer, right? So I think that what Coinbase means to a lot of people is that there's going to be a lot more newbies that it's just going to more places to sell your NFTs. And that's fantastic.
The bigger aspect of it, I believe, is that right now, for the most part, it's store value, or maybe some people are playing with DeFi a little bit. So maybe you could think of that as gamification. What we have with all the utility coming out, whether it be games or other utility with NFT projects, it gives people another thing to do with their coins, which is actually active, right? As opposed to the whole thing was like, just buy and hold your Bitcoin and that's it. And you're a moron if you do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't like lead to engagement. Like people like to do things.
No.
And so
exactly.
With Coinbase, I think they're just going to see, oh, people are going to start spending their money in NFTs. And that means they're going to bring more money into their Coinbase wallet to do more things around crypto.
More transactions. Yeah. And the other stuff I love, I think emphasizing the collection piece, the fact that you can hide stuff from your collection, so people see it. And it's not even my experience with that is that sometimes you just want to showcase certain things. And so people can just either to show someone or to show off or whatever the case may be. And then if someone goes to your OpenSea account and just sees a giant wall of stuff, and you're relying on them to filter it, it's not necessarily the best way to showcase your collection. You might want to showcase to different people in different ways. Anyway.
Well, the thing I would like about it too is the like an OpenSea, you can hide things if you want, but I can't. Unless I have not figured this out, I don't think I can put them in the order I want them to be in.
No, you can only sort them. What's the Mark Cuban site, Lazy? That's one that lets you do that. You can sort of create almost like a little short playlist of NFTs.
Well, that's a good idea. I haven't checked that out, so maybe I should. I like that idea. And I'm not there to flex, but it just seems sort of silly that the order that they're in. Like I get these like random drops sometimes from different projects I'm involved in, and so every once in a while from a third party I've never heard of. And those things tend to show up like first in my list because they're the most recent.
Yeah. Well, I've had it where I want to hide them because someone that wants to get into NFTs knows I'm a collector, and they go in and see stuff there and think, oh, I should buy that. It's like, no, that's something I didn't work out for me. It's just in my collection. Or that's something someone sent me. That's not even
exactly. Yeah, that's a trick people do. Okay. So let's talk. We were just talking about scams, but let's talk about rug pulls. There were a couple recently. So we have Tokyo 10 and we have the Crazy Lemurs. It looks like Tokyo 10 was a complete rug pull. Crazy Lemurs, I think the story there is there was maybe infighting on the team. So one of the team members basically just shut the whole project down. And I'm not sure exactly what it was. So that doesn't surprise me. I would think that, particularly with like significant amount of money involved, I think both of these were like, one of them was definitely over $1 million US equivalent. The other one was significant, but it might've been just under $1 million. So there's a lot of money involved. Maybe these people didn't, they probably got people on Fiverr. So their expenses were low. And then they're fighting about the distribution of funds because one person probably controlled the wallet.
Yep. That would be my guess. Yeah, these ones, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, that some of this stuff boggles my mind that you would go through the effort of this and then disappear. I know that and it's also hard to separate what's malicious from what is stuff got overwhelming and people got in over their heads and there's infighting, and not to say that makes it okay, but I think understanding the intention behind some of these things is just educational in general about the space.
When you don't even know if when you find out the story from the founders, if it's true. So like a good example is, I can give you two examples. So Baby Llamas, the creator, the artist, basically got pissed off, I guess, that people were asking about which roadmap to. There were a lot of investors in there who wanted to know what the pump was. And, frankly, I think that project played into that by having mutant serum right afterwards that people could also buy and then get new NFTs based on that. And at some point he was sick of answering questions and just said, you guys bought art. You didn't buy all this other stuff. We've done a lot of things beyond what we said originally we were going to do. I'm sick of having to handle all these complaints. So there will be no more activity in this. It's just like took his ball and went home. But is that true? Or was that just an excuse for someone who wanted it to be, who always planned to do a rug pull, but it didn't want it to seem like it was a rug pull in case anything ever came back on it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a new space, right? So what is the obligation of the creator when they launch a project? The roadmap is sort of a promise, but I think everyone that's in the space for all knows that the roadmap needs to be flexible in order to accommodate the community around it. I think aligning expectations is hard in this case. And managing a community is hard. Like, you can be a fantastic artist or developer or even be a team, but learning how to manage a community it's really hard. You have this I've been in this spot too many times, and it's hard you can't please everyone. And
plus it's a lot of effort.
it's a massive amount of effort, and it's really discouraging to like the harder you work, the more people come to the community and the more criticism you get. And it gets really difficult to try and, you know, I think most creators, they love something. They had some sort of goal, and maybe it was just to make money, but in some cases they're passionate about something. And the people that got involved were passionate about something. And it's hard to disappoint people that like some aspect of what you're doing.
Some project founders don't mind disappointing people. That's
No,
fair.
I think you have to be good at that, and you have to stick to your. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to stick to the thing that's true, not reacting to how other people react to what you're doing. Right? You have to adhere to your goal or your vision, and
Well, the one thing I
yeah,
would just say is I think it's very interesting that some of these rug pulls are so quick that like they don't even give themselves a chance to benefit from secondary, because there's a ton of work to actually get these things over the line, get them to sell out, whatever it is. And then to show people there's like a modicum of activity and keep them in there and getting a healthy secondary market, they could generate a lot more money if they just pulled the rug like a month later. Because there's always people who want something to happen immediately. But at this point, everyone sort of recognizes that it takes a while to add these things. All they would have to do is like, I shouldn't be telling people this, but this is how to do it, right? To maximize your rug pull take. But if they just put out like a new roadmap, people get excited, and then they just said, hey, create a little icon. You're going to get this.
yeah.
They could just drive a whole nother hype cycle and get the secondary revenue.
Well, I think your advice. I mean, it's funny that we're saying it in the context of rug pull advice, but I think if it's not, we're using rug pull really broadly here. If the thing is not necessarily a rug pull, it's that someone got in and realized that this was not what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
That advice you just gave is fantastic. Like, look, you did the hard part. Start like the last 10. It's like all the, stories of success. It's the last 10% where you get the best return, and don't give up. Just like ask for help. And
that's right. Yeah. And I think that's really good, because the people who are getting frustrated with the process, or it's more than they bargained for. Okay, well, you know what? You just got a nice windfall. You can decide to do with that whatever you want, but figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And if you've made if you've made a promise, try to fulfill it. But if you don't feel like you can fulfill the promise, be honest with the community. Some people will stick around. And then, maybe over time it becomes something and you sort of reinvest in it.
Yeah. And look, like human beings, despite what assholes we can be, like we're pretty empathetic. Like if you actually tell someone in an honest way that like, I got in over my head, this is overwhelming, I don't know what to do next. I need help and I'm thinking about stopping this. I think there's lots of people that will step up, and you'll get the inverse of the negative feedback. When we were early days of Rally, when we were focusing a lot on streamers, I sat in on a ton of user research sessions with streamers and with audience members, Twitch viewers. And there was a common theme that a lot of streamers made most of their donations and cheers and subs when they were having a bad day. Like they were losing, something bad had happened in their life, they weren't feeling great, and their community stepped up and did stuff to try and help them out.
Feel better. That's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a way to manipulate that, but I think we know when someone's being authentic on some gut level, right? So I think if someone, I don't know, I don't think it can hurt if you're watching this and you have a project that's gotten to the overwhelming stage, before you just ditch it, maybe have a candid conversation with your community and see what happens.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino made news a couple weeks ago at NFT NYC, saying that he was going to take, I think it's 7 scenes from Pulp Fiction. He's got some director's notes and other things. He's like enhancing them. Apparently he has publishing rights for the original script. And so that's,
although I know that
justification.
I think he's getting sued now, right? Or something.
He is. Yeah. Miramax, which put the movie out, says, no. This isn't publishing. This is something more than that. And we hold the rights to that. And so the question there is, who has ownership of pre-existing IP? in the media.
Yeah, because what he's selling here is the handwritten script. So these scenes, the handwritten scenes, because that's how he likes to write. He physically writes it down in a notebook,
Right.
and that's what he's selling. No one has seen it.
Right. And he's doing some enhancement around it. Right. So, um, really interesting. Right. And so, and then Miramax is saying, oh, you have, or Miramax is saying, we were planning on doing something in the NFT space, and you have impaired our ability to do that with Pulp Fiction. That's a really interesting thing too, in terms of your rights and how those might infringe on someone else's rights.
Yeah. And this is, I have all sorts of issues with this because one, there is a direct correlation between when you give something away, or the more awareness you spread about something, the more it gets purchased. So it's like the most stolen content gets the most sales and makes the most money. And yet there's this constant fight by these entities to try and prevent that. Who knows behind the scenes if they're just
a Streisand effect is at play. And so actually I think it's kind of brilliant that they do it. Like, I don't think they're trying to do it this way. Maybe they are.
Yeah.
People in Hollywood are pretty savvy, but they're going to make the Tarantino NFTs are getting that more publicity because that was a one-shot deal. Like a week ago, they probably would have gotten something else when it went up for auction, but now they're getting a whole nother media cycle around it. People who didn't hear about it the first time are going to be aware this is an option, that they might want to participate in the auction, and it allows Miramax to say, "Oh, we're going to do some other Pulp Fiction things." And by the way, what Tarantino is doing is going to be out of the reach of most collectors. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I did the form, and when it asked how much, so you can send in your email to get notified for the auction, and then it said if you were really interested, you could fill out this little quick survey. And when they asked how much you were willing to bid, I have it here. Give me a second. They gave you 5 options, and they were under 300 ETH, 300 to 500 ETH, 500 to 1,000 ETH, 1,000 to 2,000, or greater than 2,000 ETH. So they're setting expectations pretty high.
I'd say this is probably out of the reach of the ordinary NFT collector. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, $1 million for a scene, handwritten scene from the film.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a lot.
So I'm thinking that Miramax comes in and does something that more people can participate in, right? Much more like what we saw what the Matrix is doing, like 100,000 reasonable price.
Yeah.
So people want a little piece of memorabilia. Maybe Miramax wanted to do like the high price one. They probably do because they're probably enamored with Christie's and Sotheby's, and they don't actually care about maximizing revenue or the fans, which would seem about right. I don't know them. Maybe they do care. But I'd say like maximizing revenue. I bet there's a price point that is something under 300 ETH where they could actually make a lot more.
Yeah. I was just trying to do some quick math here to see. I mean, even if they did like sold frames of the film, like we're going to NFT this one frame of this movie. And you can own lots of frames in a movie.
They've got the great scenes about mayonnaise and French fries. The Royale with cheese. The GIMP. Yeah, like there's so many things that are just part of popular culture. And they're probably going to do their whole Top Shot thing. It's going to be like centralized and a lot of people are going to own it, but they're not really going to own it. I think this is the real question. Do we need actually not just a terminology for like bad NFT projects, but maybe we need terminology for whether you NFTs that are NFTs that you don't actually own.
Yeah, like do you get the fake prop from the movie? Like you have the NFT prop from the movie, but the real prop is...
No, I'm just saying like, some of these platforms, like you can't take
I see what you're saying.
It's only available in their app. You don't have rights to like rebroadcast it anywhere. It's like amazing.
Yeah, and that doesn't do a lot for the It's hard to make arguments for that when we're at this stage where we're still trying to educate people on the potential of it all, right?
And people are into that, like some of these platforms that are centralized, that are custodial, because they like the brands that are part of it. And if you want to control it all, that's like, I can see why a lot of brands are going into these spaces.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, okay, so you own that sort of. I mean, like if that place shuts down or is compromised or something like that, you're sort of out of luck. And this is very different.
Yeah.
We'll probably talk about Hen next week or the week after, but Hen shut down. Hick at Nunk. People aren't familiar with it. Like sort of the purist art marketplace for anybody who wanted to get online. Tezos. So definitely not central like Ethereum is in terms of the activity space, but pretty well respected. A lot of really strong artists on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
The founder of that marketplace just like shut it down, like no warning. Basically was mad at people again. It's like was sick of getting criticism about developing it. So it's gone, but all that art was on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And so within a day, someone else had spun up an alternative front end viewer.
Yeah.
Everyone could see it. They could already see it. Like they could have access to it through the blockchain anyway, but someone just made the marketplace again. And so
yeah,
like hardly skipped a beat.
Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, that's a testament to what this technology can do.
All right. So last thing we should just touch on really quickly. We started out talking about Bored Ape up to the beginning. There is also a new mobile game coming out, Bored Ape versus Mutant Apes. It looks really cool. They've only shown just a little screen grab. Well, it's actually a screen video grab of someone playing the game. It looks really cool. It looks like an actual real game, not like some of these sort of rip-off games that a lot of the projects are doing.
Yeah. I'm excited. I mean, even if it's lightweight and just a fun thing, I think folks getting started in NFTs and gaming is a big deal. And starting to, again, let's start experimenting and making mistakes and see what works and what doesn't, and evolve it, because the potential here to me is so exciting.
Right. And I like this idea too, that you think about Bored Ape came out and it was just the Bored Apes, and each one was differentiated, but there wasn't this idea of like a faction, right?
Yeah.
Mutants created a natural faction. So now you can actually do some things where you can create different experiences, or you can create experiences where they commingle or have different capabilities. So, I mean, that's another thing for people to think about in terms of their project. What can they do? And I think Bored Ape's great. I mean, they've generated a tremendous amount of revenue from this project. The fact that they're investing some into these little experiences, and these are shared experiences. I think it's there was one in August where they had a game that people played.
Yeah,
and it's like here and gone, right?
Yeah.
And this one, I think it's only supposed to be available for 10 days. So that's another thing where it's like what, disappearing posts, something like that.
Yeah.
Or Instagram stories. It's like
ephemeral.
Yeah, and you create that shared experience where everyone comes together, kind of like sports and things like that.
Sure.
I think it's really smart a way to do it. And maybe some of these things should be kept up for a while, but that's just going to require you to like invest much more in that product.
Totally. Yeah, someone's got to. Yeah.
And you only really have potential of around 25,000 people. Is it 30,000 people, something like that, in the Bored Ape community total who can play it. So it's not going to be like huge.
Yeah,
roll it out for 10 days and maybe do another season like 2 months from now with new features.
Yeah, I think it's a great way also to just see what works, put stuff out for a little bit, get feedback. It's almost like approaching it like MVP software. Like you get something into the world, see how people respond to it, and then iterate from there.
Okay, I think we covered it all. So what do you want people to follow up on that you're working on these days? Where do you want to direct them?
So NFT Mystics is still going on. I think I might have there might be a couple NFTs left there. I got some other stuff in the works I'm still working on. Not really super ready to talk about it, but I'm going to be doing a big push towards some things soon. I definitely think the Niftorian stuff and the art contest, I'm going to take a look at that this week too and see if I
good.
have some time to throw something in for fun.
Good. I'd love to see you in there. Yeah. And I should tell everyone, just Niftorian.com. Go to just so you know, Niftorians are the residents of Niftorious, right? So they're the PFEs. And so you'll hear both Niftorious, which is like the Discord and the news and data and the analysis, and like that's the name of the community. Niftorian is the NFT the NFT PFEs that will roll out a little bit later. If you go in now, actually, you will be basically an OG. Our OG primes, I think, are gone right now, but these are just Discord roles, right? We're not talking about. We haven't sold anything yet, so you can get it. You can get an early. You should come in and check out the art contest because there's some really cool stuff. And I think we had a lot of entries. I don't know, we probably had 30 or 40 entries of something that like we announced at midnight on a Thursday, and we said this is only running for 4 days. Good luck, right? And so just a bunch of people put stuff in, including the people who were the scammers. but it was by and large, it was mostly like totally legit artists, and we had nice conversation about their art in there. So definitely check that out. Just go to niftorian.com. You'll be able to get to the Discord. We hope to see you in there. Scott Leach, thank you very much. You can follow Scott on the Twitter at Scott Leach. I'm at Creatorius Rex on the Twitter. And until next week, happy hunting.
All right. So long all.
Bye-bye.